All right. Hello, everybody. I just want to check with Amelia and Carrie, make sure y'all can still hear me.
I can hear you.
All right. Well, welcome to our first webinar of the year, How to Be More Resilient in Life, Leadership, and Business. Joining us today is Carrie Siggins. She is the CEO of StoneAge. I'll give you a little bit more of a bio in just a minute. I wanted to start with a quick overview of League of Railway Women in case you were joining us for the first time. We are an organization that is focused on cultivating women in rail. And I think it's really important to give you guys a historical look on what we've done. Our organization was actually founded in 1997, and since then we've been really dedicated to connecting and cultivating women in rail. Carrie is outside of rail, but we figured we'd bring in some different industry experience today and give us a little bit broader look at some of the strong females that we have working in other industries. A lot of our programs right now are focused on improving representation of women in our industry and obviously providing some growth opportunities to better diversify the rail industry. But I think any of the skill sets that we talk about in any of our webinars this year are really going to be applicable across multiple industries. One thing I did want to mention that we have that's brand new and we're very, very excited about it. We do have some mentor sessions. We just are working on kicking off our new mentoring program. If you want to learn more, visit the website, LRW, and you can kind of find it through our the tabs along the top. This will give you an opportunity to connect with mentors in rail. It's really super flexible, self-led mentoring program. We have a great scheduling app, so I encourage all of you to take advantage of it, whether you are just starting your career or 30 years into your career. We have some great people. Right now we have 10 mentors that are available and have their times posted. If you are interested in becoming a mentor, there's an opportunity on that page too. So please, let's make this a great opportunity for everybody involved. The next thing I wanted to just chat on is a little bit about our corporate membership program. Oops, and I skipped that slide. We have quite a few corporate partners. We established our corporate partnership probably 2 or 3 years ago, and it's grown significantly. So I would highly encourage anybody on the phone that has multiple people within an organization that's interested in participating in our organization to look at the corporate partner program. We have various levels of corporate partnerships ranging from a patron to platinum. You get various opportunities in each one of those ranges. If you are interested in becoming a corporate partner or just becoming an individual member, please reach out to Annie at membership@railwaywomen.org. She will help you through that. Today, as I said, we are fortunate to have Carrie with us on this webinar. Carrie is the CEO of StoneAge, which is a global leader in design and manufacturing of high-pressure water blast cleaning tools and robotic equipment that's used in the industrial cleaning industry. Carrie was named one of Colorado's top 25 most influential young professionals and was a finalist for Colorado CEO of the Year in 2017. So I know Carrie personally. We went to college together, and she has always been an extraordinary leader. So I'm so excited to have her on this webinar today, hosting it and talking to us a little bit about her experience and the challenges that she's encountered. I did want to give you a couple things about the webinar itself. We are going to run this one a little bit different than we have in the past. This one is going to be kind of open to questions as we move along. All of you are currently muted and you will stay that way. So if you have any questions along the way, please submit them through the chat window. It's a questions window, and I'll be keeping track of those and moderating those questions. We'll have some key areas that we can take some breaks and ask Carrie some questions. Carrie has a lot of different experience, and so please use her skill set right now. We have an hour with her, so let's put it to good use and ask her some tough questions too. I like to put her on the spot. I think the last thing that I want to point out, there is a handout available if you want to take a look at it as we're moving through the webinar. On your user panel, there's a section called handouts, and it's a little PDF called Build Resilience. So definitely check that out. Carrie, I am going to go on mute until I have some questions to ask, and I am going to hand it over to you, lady.
All right, perfect. So everybody just hold on one second. I literally just got a new puppy this weekend, and he has just moved away from me from here. Come here. He wants to run away, and I got to make sure he's out my feet. So if you really wanted to start your day with seeing a new puppy, there he is. Okay, stay. It's the first rule of bouncing back. Just like go with it. All right, so I'm sure the first question that everybody's asking is, what is a water blast tool? So just to give some context, it is a squirt gun on steroids, basically. So it uses high pressure rotary water to clean. So I am in like a very dirty industry. I'm in a male dominated industry. I've always wondered, like, how exactly did I get into industrial cleaning? I always thought I was going to be in a much more glamorous industry, but life has brought me here to the world of cleaning, and I am so grateful. But I do remember the very first time I was told that a woman couldn't sell a technical product, that a woman couldn't make it in a technical industry. So I was living in Austin, Texas. I was in my mid-20s, and I was in operations management for a very sizable manufacturing company. I loved operations, but I knew in my heart of hearts I was a salesperson. So I wanted to try sales. I talked to my boss, and he said, sure, I'll let you dabble in it, which meant I could do it part-time while still fulfilling my full-time role as an operations coordinator. So you can imagine what that led to. Not a lot of success. But that didn't stop me. I applied for an open sales position in Houston, and I was promptly passed up. And my boss just said, yeah, I just don't think you're cut out for sales. You clearly didn't make any impact in your part-time sales role. And I just don't think that women can sell a technical product. Okay, so a month later, I had quit my job and I had gotten a sales position as an account manager in a completely new industry, IT, high-end IT and software recruiting, pretty technical. I knew nothing about it. And within a year, I was winning awards. So that is how I approach my life. If I have resistance or roadblocks, I push through them. If something isn't working, I change it. If someone doesn't believe in me, I move on. I have always identified as a resilient person. There's nothing that I cannot overcome. I am resilient. People often ask me where this resiliency came from, and I attribute it to my mother. My mother is the strongest, most amazing person I know. She's a mom of two. She divorced my cheating father. When I was 10, she drove 100 miles each way to put herself through college 3 days a week so that she could create a better life for herself and my brother. She always worked 2 jobs, and she was never a victim. Never once did she complain about having to work 2 jobs. Never once did she complain about that drive from Montrose, Colorado to Gunnison, Colorado, which anybody who lives in Colorado knows that that is a sketchy drive. And she was never the victim. She always just said, we can make it through anything. And this really sits strongly with me, because she said, if you work hard, if you show up with accountability and a positive attitude, and if you never give up, you'll be just fine. And so I never thought a whole lot about it, because bouncing back from setbacks is just what we did. So I bounced back until I didn't. Sometimes life doesn't go your way. Sometimes you're rejected. Sometimes you have disappointment. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes your feelings get hurt. Sometimes you make really big mistakes and it hurts. But how you deal with those events determines how happy and successful you'll be in life. That's right, your attitude. I know you've heard this, right? Your attitude, your mindset, your actions can turn those challenging situations into life-changing events if you choose. The key to bouncing back is resilience. I'm often asked, how at 29 did you become a CEO? And I don't always know how to answer, because it involves some, vulnerability. The truth is, it actually involves crawling back from hitting rock bottom and learning through lots and lots of failure how to build a company in a male-dominated, dirty, nasty industry. Sorry if there's anybody on the water blasting industry, but everybody knows that it's nasty. So I learned how to be resilient, not only from the mistakes that I made, but from really bouncing back from that rock bottom. So rock bottom, you ask? Well, I'll tell you about it. When I was 27 years old, I saved myself from an overdose. I was living in Austin, and it was a very unfulfilling and party-fueled life. To put it bluntly, I was doing a lot of drugs. Nights spilled into mornings, weekends spilled into weekdays, and I was on a complete roller coaster. Work, get high, recover, rinse, and repeat. It seemed like fun, but really what I was doing was fulfilling a deep and self-destructive need to be recognized, to be seen. I did as many drugs as possible so that I would be seen as a badass. And I know that sounds really stupid, like, like what, really? But that's what it was for me. I pushed boundaries in everything that I did in life just to be seen. Now, I didn't realize that back then. It took years of self-reflection and coaching and some therapy to understand why I made those choices. And it took one final bender gone wrong to make me say, enough is enough. It was Labor Day weekend of 2006, and Austin was in complete party mode. There were famous DJs. I love house music. Famous DJs in town, and I was on day 3 of no food and no sleep. On that Monday morning of Labor Day, I had no choice but to go home. My body was completely shutting down. I called a cab, and I stumbled into my apartment. I was a complete and utter mess. Exhausted but wide awake, I took a sleeping pill to wait it out. All of a sudden, nausea came. I stood up to run to the bathroom, but I didn't make it. I hit the floor. When I woke up, I had no idea how long I had been out. I was laying in my own vomit, and I was breathing, but very slowly, but my heart was racing. Am I overdosing? Am I overdosing? That's what I asked myself. I rolled to my side and laid there, willing myself not to die. Just one more breath. That's it. Just focus on taking one more breath. Sorry, it's an emotional story. More time passed and I was in and out of consciousness. And finally, I had the wherewithal to sit up and drink some water. I had my head in my hands and my hands on my knees, wondering how I didn't die, but almost wanting to. Really, I said to myself, do you really want to die right now on the floor of your shitty apartment? No, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die in bed. So I crawled into my bedroom, put myself into bed, and I slept for 24 hours. I was so weak that I couldn't go to work. I called in sick 2 days in a row. This is not okay. I do not miss work. You party hard, but you work hard. You do not miss work. I am a professional. Clearly, I'm a professional. Even though I haven't showered in days and I have pizza on my pillow and vomit in my hair, I am clearly a professional. But I couldn't pull myself together. Instead, I binge watched Law & Order, which is my favorite TV show, and ate the last of the stale pizza. What had I become? That afternoon, I knew I needed help. I felt such deep shame and hatred for myself. I had to get out of Austin. I needed to go home to my mom. I called my dearest friend, Joe, and I said, I need to talk. Can you meet me at your house? And I told him everything. I told him how I had hidden my drug problem. I told him how I was deeply in debt and that I needed to go home, but I didn't know how to get there. He put his hand on my knee and he said to me, I will help you, but only if you help yourself. You have to choose to live or you're going to choose to die. That afternoon, I called my mother and told her everything, and she said, come home. 6 weeks later, I put most of my belongings in storage, and I drove the exact 1,000 miles from my friend Joe's apartment in Austin to my mom's house in Durango, repeatedly crying, going, what in the hell am I doing? How would I even make it in Durango? Are there even jobs there? And really, I'm 28 and leaving my life in Austin to go home to live with my mom. But as I reflected in that moment, I knew I wanted to create a different life for myself. And I knew that Durango was where I was supposed to be. I don't know how I knew that, but I just knew it inside, deep inside. And little did I know how much my life would change. Psychology today says that resilience is the ineffable quality that allows some people to be knocked down by life and come back stronger than ever. Rather than letting failure overcome them and drain their resolve, they find a way to rise from the ashes. Psychologists have identified some of the factors that make someone resilient, including a positive attitude, optimism, the ability to regulate emotions, and the ability to see failure as a form of helpful feedback. Even after misfortune, resilient people are blessed with such an outlook that they can change course and soldier on. Change course and soldier on. When I got to Durango, I had no idea what I was going to do. How do you even get a job in a small mountain town? Apparently from a newspaper. When Stone Age was advertising for a general manager, I applied, even though I was grossly underqualified. But I thought, hey, even if I don't get the position, maybe I can get my foot in the door and get a different role there. I thought, hey, all I have to do is change course. All I have to do is have a positive attitude, optimism, and soldier on. The two founders saw something in me: potential, drive, intensity, smarts, and a positive attitude. They decided to hire me, which is crazy. I know, it's crazy. They didn't know my story then, they know it now. And 2 months from the day that I left Austin, I was running a company. What? How do I run a company? How do I go from being an account manager to a general manager? I had absolutely no idea. I was so in over my head. But I thought about what my mom used to say: if you work hard, show up with accountability and a positive attitude, and never give up, you'll be just fine. So that's what I did. I asked questions. I listened to my employees. I met with my customers. I rolled up my sleeves, got on the floor, bolted products together to get things out the door. I solved problems. I made some good decisions, and I made a ton of mistakes. I threw all of that intensity that I lived life with not such great outcomes into figuring out how to be a leader. I wanted to be seen and recognized as a good leader. I wanted to push boundaries in leadership, not in self-destructive ways. I was determined to change my circumstance, to change the course of my life, and I did it by leaning into what I attribute to my resiliency: accountability, honesty, fortitude, grit, self-forgiveness. I asked for help and I accepted help, which is very hard to do. I built a strong support system of people who would keep it real with me, people who I could lean on when I needed help, but who would also hold me accountable to my decisions, my commitments, and my actions. And I needed that. 2 years from the same day I left Austin, I was clean. I was out of debt, and I was a first-time homeowner. Another year after that, I was named CEO. Now, I don't want to make it sound like this was easy. It wasn't. I have over a decade of tears and sweat, wins and losses. I have questioned if I was cut out to be a CEO. I've had an employee tell me I ruined his life. I almost got divorced. And it's really easy to focus on those difficult times, but those difficult times have led to so many more outstanding positive ones. I know that I have positively impacted the lives of hundreds of my employees and my customers. I've had spouses tell me that their other half is a better person for having worked for me and worked for Stone Age. I've learned how to build a successful company by staying true to myself, and I've done it by being resilient. But it's all easier said than done. So how do I do it? So I've got 5 things that I really lean into when I build resiliency. So I'm going to take them one at a time. And if there's any questions about any of them in particular, Carrie, ask. Otherwise, I'll keep going and we can talk at and answer questions at the end. So the first one is take responsibility for everything that happens to you. The only way to build resiliency is to be responsible for your life and everything that happens to you. Do not play a victim. Refuse to play a victim. Now, I don't mean for this to come across as harsh, because I understand that things happen to you that are out of your control. But it is so incredibly powerful and empowering when you say, I am responsible for how I respond to this. I am responsible for the outcome after this happens. Remember, adopt the mindset that things don't happen to you, they happen because of you, and you will build resiliency. This will empower you to change any situation, no matter what. So early in my days, I had a really rocky relationship with one of my board of directors. He and I just did not click. I felt he was hypercritical. He was condescending. I rarely ever felt supported by him. He was always just telling me what I did wrong, and it was hurtful. And I secretly thought that he didn't believe that I could do the job because I was a woman, and a young woman at that. Really easy to get into that victim mentality. So at the end of my first full year as a CEO, I wanted to negotiate my salary, which, as you know, is the most nerve-wracking thing you can do. It's so easy to chicken out. But I was armed with data. I was prepared to ask for a significant increase. And I came in to show them how I was not being compensated compared to peers, to CEOs who ran similar sized companies. And after I gave my spiel, he said, "Yeah, but you're not really a CEO." I was flabbergasted. I was stunned. And then I was pissed. And then I was hurt, and I cried myself to sleep. And I was just determined to remove him from the board. He was chauvinistic. He didn't believe in me, and he needed to go. So I went to sleep, and the next day I woke up and I felt better. And I was definitely a lot more rational. And I knew that blaming him would make me a victim. And remember, I refused to be a victim. So instead, I applied counterfactual thinking. So according to Wiki, a counterfactual thinking is a concept in psychology that involves the human tendency to create possible alternatives to life events that have already occurred, something that is contrary to what happened. Now, I know that that sounds like alternative facts, but hear me out. It really does work. If you start to say, maybe what I think happened isn't true. So I knew that blaming him wouldn't reflect well on me, nor would it change the situation. I would still feel stuck and unsupported and unhappy. So instead of trying to justify my feelings, I tried to see it from his perspective. So I applied counterfactual thinking. I asked myself, what if he's right? Am I acting and performing like a professional, experienced CEO? Is it unreasonable for him to think that the jump I made from general manager to CEO in such a short time was too fast? Maybe I do have some things to learn. How do I approach this like a seasoned and professional CEO? So instead of being angry and instead of being vindictive to kick him off the board, I called him. I wanted to understand what he meant by his comment and why he said it. He immediately apologized for his choice of words and shared with me that he thought I was a brilliant leader, but yes, I was inexperienced. Look, I've just been around the blocks a few times, he said. I know how hard it is to build a company. I want to support you, but you do not always make it easy. Sometimes you brush aside suggestions and you minimize the difficulty of the road ahead, and it comes across as defensive and, to be honest, a little bit arrogant. Ouch. I want to see you succeed, and one way to do that is to use the experience of your board. Use us as a competitive advantage. Don't get defensive when we give you feedback. Wow, that was powerful. I thanked him for his candor. In so many ways, he was right. Sure, his delivery was not effective, but I didn't use poor delivery as a reason not to own it. So at that point on, I made a significant shift in how I worked with my board. I did use them as a competitive advantage. I was determined to have a fantastic relationship with all of them. And now I seek radically candid feedback from them and from my team so that I always stay humble and grounded. I want people to keep it real. Owning it means you can change it. You've got to own it, even if it hurts to hear it, even if it hurts to look at your role in a situation, even if you don't want to say, this is my fault, say, this is my fault. If you want to be resilient, refuse to retreat. Refuse to deny, ignore, or blame. Remember, things don't happen to you, they happen because of you. And you have the power to create a resilient outcome. Any questions on that particular one, on owning it? If not, Carrie, I'll keep going. Keep going?
Yep, I think you're good to keep going. I see a couple people typing, so I'll catch them up on the next.
No worries. Why don't we just go, you know what, why don't we just go through, and then at the end, then anybody can ask me anything.
Perfect.
That sound good? Okay, great. All right, number 2 is to build a support system. So resilient people have a strong support system, and it doesn't have to be a big support system, but you've got to have somebody who you can rely on, or a group of people who you can rely on to help you through the tough times. So how do you build a strong support system? Well, you reach out to people and you say, hey, I need help. and that is not always easy. One of my most painful memories of asking my support system for help was when I left Austin. It was humiliating to ask my mother if I could move back in with her at 28 years old, right? That was not part of my life plan. I could barely choke out the words when I had to ask my friend Joe for $2,500 to make it back to Durango, even though I had a high-paying job. I was completely and utterly broke. I was mortified when I had to go to my boss in Austin and explain to him why I was completely flailing at work, and ask for his forgiveness and ask for his help in helping me get a job by being a reference when I got back on my feet in Durango. All those things were humiliating, but I asked anyway. I knew that I could not get out of this on my own. I had to surrender to asking for help from my support system. And this allowed me to take a huge step in changing my life. One where I came back from the depths of addiction and horrible, horrible choices. And I couldn't have done it without them. And I've carried this into my professional career too. My support system has hands down helped me become a better leader. Being a young CEO, there's just so much that I didn't know. Clearly, I got that feedback. And it takes vulnerability and trust to say, I'm not sure what to do right now. I'm a little bit lost. I'm a little bit scared that I'm going to make the wrong decision. But because I surrounded myself with mentors and people who had experience different than me and who were smarter than me, I could bounce ideas off of them. And they could hold me accountable and point me in the wrong direction if I needed course correcting. And that allowed me to take some risks and to try new things. And when you get outside of your comfort zone like that, it's easier to be resilient. It's easier to say, hey, I have people who believe in me, and this helps me build my confidence and in turn, my resiliency. So if you don't have that strong support system, start today, whether it's a friend, whether it's family, whether you hire a coach, it's never too late to start to build that, because having that support system will help you bounce back when life gets tough, when leadership gets tough. Number 3, stand up for yourself. This is such a hard one, right? I mean, it's so scary to stand up for yourself in certain instances. I know that still to this day, sometimes I get like that, I have to go stand up for myself. But whether it comes from being afraid of being judged or shunned or laughed at or dismissed, or worse, to be fired, there's no doubt that standing up for yourself comes with social and professional risks. But you will never get to be where you want to be if you do not stand up for yourself. To me, standing up for yourself means speaking up when you feel like you're being mistreated or disrespected. It means asking for what you want. And it means making tough decisions that maintains boundaries, which is really important. Boundaries, values, and your self-esteem. One of my most insecure moments as a leader came when I had to fire an employee who was absolutely loved by our customers. And he had been with the company for, I don't know, over 20 years, 21, 22 years. But he was completely disrespectful and insubordinate to me. He would say one thing to my face, we would agree to a plan, and then he would literally walk out of my office and go do the exact opposite thing. And he would trash me behind my back. And I did everything I could to turn this relationship around, but he just wasn't having it. He would not accept me as a leader no matter what I did. And it became obvious that I was going to have to fire him. But I could not stop questioning myself. Am I really a good leader? Have I done everything in my power to turn the situation around? Would our customers leave if I fired him? Would my employees lose respect for me if I fired him? I spent countless nights losing sleep, pondering these questions, spinning on these questions. But finally, I had to do it. I was so nervous the day that I let him go. I was like in a panic mode. What would he say? What would happen? All of these negative stories were just spinning in my head. But I told him I was letting him go because he didn't keep his commitments, that he was actively working against me, that he was disrespectful and insubordinate. He wasn't a good teammate and I couldn't trust him. I was determined to stand up for myself, not only as a leader, but as a human being. Well, guess what? None of the horrible things that I thought were going to happen happened. He agreed that it was time for him to go. It wasn't the right fit and he didn't want to work for me. The rest of the sales team stepped up and in fact blossomed. A few weeks later, my customers were singing their praises like, oh, who was that guy that you fired? I don't even remember him. And my employees respected me more for standing up for myself because they knew what he was doing. They knew he was actively working against me. And once again, resiliency proved to be my friend. Fourth, take a deep breath and let it go. Letting it go is another way that you can be more resilient. There is no point in holding on to those negative thoughts and to that baggage, because you know what baggage does? It weighs you down and it holds you back. So several years ago, I met with a customer and he told me, which still just blows me away to this day that he said this, I'm really surprised that John and Jerry hired you to take over the company. I don't think you'll make it. This is just too tough of a business for someone who isn't technical and who doesn't have field experience. So in other words, you'll never make it in this industry because you're a woman, right? That took me back to that time in Austin when I had heard that from another person, and it stuck with me. And I really started to question myself. Do I have the talent to do this? Do I have the ability to do this? And I talked about it all the time. And one day, a friend of mine in my support system said, Carrie, you have got to stop. Clearly, you've done a good job. Look at where the company is. You need to forget what he said and move on. This is not doing you any good. Lose the chip on your shoulder about this. Duh, right? Why was I doing this to myself? He was totally right. I was hanging on to an insensitive comment, and all it did was weigh on my confidence, and it did not serve me. So from that day forward, I vowed to let it go. That comment just didn't matter. Now, whenever I feel like I'm getting amped up over a situation or comment, because that can happen, I tap into those feelings of letting it go. Keeping your cool is just such a vital leadership and life trait, and I always want to be cool, calm, and collected. When I spin on things, I lose my sleep, which leads to storytelling, and it's usually really negative and bad stories. And then lack of sleep and storytelling leads to making poor decisions. And as a leader, I don't want to make poor decisions. So I know I need to let it go. I need to be resilient. Instead, I go for a walk or a run. That's my way of letting go stress, where I write out how I want to handle the situation or talk to a person I trust to get perspective. And then I remind myself that after a good night's sleep, I'll be more rational and it won't be nearly as big of a deal, and I let it go. So remember, beating yourself up, letting others squash your confidence, any of those things just decrease your resiliency. So stop the negative talk, forgive yourself, forgive others, and just learn from those situations and move on. Take a deep breath and just let it go. It is what it is, and the most important thing is taking that action of moving forward. What's that one thing I can do to let it go and move forward? And finally, don't give up. The fastest way to not bounce back is to, well, not bounce back. Giving up, in my opinion, is just an excuse. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't make a different decision and say, I don't want this anymore. That's okay. That's not giving up. But throwing your hands up and just say, I cannot do this. I am not strong enough. I am not smart enough. I'm not fill in the blank enough is giving up. Yes, you will have to change. You will have to grow. You will have to ask for feedback. Perhaps you might even have to get professional help. But whatever you do not give up. If you want a happy and successful life, it's imperative that you don't give up. Think about the most successful people you know. It might seem like they just move through life with a breeze, but I will guarantee that in reality, they too have had to overcome setbacks and roadblocks and negative experiences. You have to dig deep and look for that determination to handle whatever life throws at you. You can persevere no matter what. It might not be easy, but you can persevere. I think back to that day that I was laying on the floor of my apartment, willing myself to live, even though I was questioning if I actually wanted to. It was by far the lowest point of my life. I was filled with shame and dread and fear. I had no money and a big drug problem. But I am where I am today because I did not give up on myself, not on that day and not in the future. I worked hard to rebuild my life. I leaned on people for help, and I trusted that I could get through it, even though it was painful. I proved to myself that I could bounce back from anything. Look, life takes all kinds of twists and turns, and sometimes it meanders along. Other times it feels like this is awesome, everything is on track, it's going great. And then other times It feels like you are in a free fall to rock bottom. But being resilient allows you to go with the flow. It allows you to come back no matter the situation. So don't let your mistakes and failures take you down. Look at them as research on how not to do something and how to bounce back stronger. If there's one thing that I hope to leave with you today, it is the courage to take action, whether it's one small step or if it's embarking on a completely new life transition. You can create a better life for yourself. You can bounce back from hard things. You are resilient. We are all resilient. So that is my story, and I would love questions. So like Carrie said, give it to me hard. I was like, oh God, that sounded really awkward. Give me hard questions, please.
Well, I have a couple that have come in, and one of them is pretty fascinating to me because I think this is a struggle for everybody, and I think it kind of relates back to your conversation and several conversations that you mentioned, and really having difficult conversations. The salary piece, that's always scary when you're talking about negotiating because it's questioning your value and the inherent value that the company has for you. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you prepare for those difficult conversations and if they're different in regard to gaining feedback or having to dismiss somebody? What is your preparation process for that?
So preparation, hands down. Anything that's going to be emotionally charged, I try to make sure that I am prepared. So whether it's salary negotiation, right? I didn't finish that story. Like I was able to negotiate my salary and get that increase I was looking for. But it was because I was prepared. If I'm giving tough feedback for somebody, I want the delivery to be as good as I can make it because it's hard for people to hear tough feedback. And if I say it in a way that makes it even more difficult to hear, then it's easy to blame the delivery than it is to actually hear that feedback. Same thing when you're letting somebody go. It's always just be prepared for what that situation might bring. So that's my number one piece of advice. The number two piece of advice is to trust yourself when you go into these things. Like it's really easy to start to lose that confidence to say, oh, I can't negotiate this. Or if someone pushes back on your salary negotiation, to just roll over and say, okay, or to chicken out to give that tough feedback because you don't trust that you're going to say it in a way that can be heard, or you're going to hurt somebody's feelings or make somebody mad. And you've just got to trust that you trust yourself. And then the third piece is own it. You might get that pushback. You might get tough feedback from the person that you're talking to in any of those emotionally charged situations. And you might make a mistake, and you can own all of those things. You can own that maybe you didn't do it perfectly. You can own that you had a role to play. You can own that maybe your performance wasn't needed where it needed to be to get to that next level. And I think that allows for an open dialogue and conversation. So those would be my three tips: is be prepared, trust yourself, and make sure that you own it.
Wonderful. Okay, the next question is really about accountability, and I know you focused a lot about that in your discussion and how you apply that to your life and your choices. But this question is really about leadership and getting people to work on their own accountability. How do you approach people when they're unwilling to take accountability for their choices and their actions?
Oh, that's such a good one. I'm just going to put it bluntly. If you're an adult and you are not an accountable person, it's really tough to get there. I think it is a trait that is ingrained in us at a young age or not. I have spent so much time trying to get unaccountable people to be accountable with very limited success. And so, in most situations, from a work perspective, it just doesn't work out. Because if somebody truly doesn't want to see their role in something, truly just always plays that victim card, it's going to take a lot of work to help them understand that. And as a leader, you don't necessarily have time to do that. Now, for those who you can see the glimmer of hope, I really suggest doing a 360 review. So I had an employee once who really had a lot of blind spots and thought that because I was the one giving him feedback that it was an issue between the two of us, but really everybody was just too scared to tell him, but they would tell me. And so but I knew that he just had like so much to bring to the company and that it was worth trying. And so I brought in somebody to do a 360 review with him, which he was open to. And he rated himself on a multitude of traits and behaviors. And then we had his peers and his direct reports do the same. And then the gap were the blind spots, right? The things that he rated himself high and other things people rated him low. Those were the blind spots that he needed to work on. And just having a little bit of coaching really helped to see like how I perceive myself isn't necessarily how other people perceive me. And if I want to be an effective employee, I'm going to have to be accountable to these things. And he made like a significant change, but it was only because he was willing to say, okay, you know what, I've heard this before. Maybe I do have a problem. So I would definitely employ a 360 for those people. Even if you don't have that as part of your process within your organization, you can create a mini one and collect that kind of feedback for that person. But if a person does not want to hear it and is constantly in that blame mode, victim mode, deny mode, I really think that you should question if it's a good fit in your organization or on your team. You know, not always do you get to deal with that if it's a peer. And I would just try to, you know, distance yourself as much as possible and make sure that you stay accountable, because it's really tough to get an unaccountable adult to see it. I wish I had a secret. A trick up my sleeve, but I don't. I just have not had a lot of success in turning people like that around.
Yeah, and I think the important part is kind of going back to some of your earlier discussion and taking the appropriate steps to change.
Yeah.
Right, to not just maintain the situation and clearly nobody's happy in the situation, and do, you know, whether it be you that has to take the action or escalate it to somebody that can. I think you know, having that confidence to be able to escalate the situation is very important.
Yeah, excellent. Very well put, Carrie.
Okay, I think the next question is actually again about salary. I think the salary discussion brought up quite a bit of interest here. This one says, understood that it's important to review the market, for instance, but do you approach salary based on what you believe your worth and value are, period? For instance, the company may say that other employees have more experience in different departments, making salaries close to what you think you just asked for. Does this matter? So basically, you know, how do you do that research and kind of present that case, and what's the position?
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, every manager is going to be different. So this is how, you know, this is how I approach it. And this is how I like it when people approach it with me. One, I try never to compare, you know, it's good to say, here's comparable data that's out there, but comparing yourself to individuals within an organization is a very slippery slope. So I try to make it about the data and the benchmarking that's out there, rather than, well, this person in this department makes more than me and I'm doing a better job, right? That does not typically land well with a boss. And another way, the best way that this is what I love it when my employees do to me, is to two-step the approach. You know, based on my research, I feel that I should be making $10,000 more a year. And so what I would like to propose is that we split the difference. And here's what the benchmark looks like. Here are all the things that I do. And so would it be possible for me to get half of it now? And then in 6 months, if I'm continuing to perform at this level, that I get the next half of it then. That is a very easy way to be able to get yourself there, to show that you're willing to give and take, and work with your boss on those types of salary negotiations. never threaten, unless you really are prepared to walk away. And if you are, then you should be questioning why you're not negotiating your salary anyway. And try not to back your boss into a corner. Nobody likes that ever. Nobody, no human being likes to be backed into a corner. So how do you get to be able to say to that yes versus the wanting someone to say no because they're upset with your delivery? So do your research, compare to benchmarks, don't compare to other employees, and have a plan to two-step to get to where you want. I think that's a really effective way to negotiate your salary. That's what I've done. I have had to negotiate my salary every single year with my board, except until recently when I could just make it purely metrics based, which is fine for my type of position, but not necessarily for all positions at all levels of the organization. And so there's always that, there's always going to be the gray area piece, the thing that you can't just say, well, I did X, Y, and Z, and I'm performing well, right? There's all the soft skills that come with it too. So I did this two-step approach multiple times to be able to work up my salary. Okay, if I do, this is where the benchmark is, let's split the difference. And if I do these things, can we do another salary review in 6 months? And it's a lot easier for your boss to say yes. So those would be my tips.
Awesome.
There's a great book, real quick, there's a great book by Alexandra Carter. And she's a professor, I believe, at Columbia University. And she has a new book out on negotiation, and a lot of it is negotiating your salary. And she has some really great tips in there. So check out her book. I can't remember the name of it, but if you look up Alexandra Carter, professor, her book is out there. And it's filled with all different kinds of advice with different strategies with different types of bosses if you want to read more.
Okay, and actually I'm glad that leads great into the next question that we have. One of our listeners was asking whether or not you have a favorite leadership book recommendation or a series of good books for reading.
I know I need to ask that. What my little handout should have been is my top 5 books, because I'm always asked that question.
Well, we can always send that out later. So
I know. I'll send out, you know what? I'll send out my reading list and for everybody. Okay, so if you're a new manager or just want to be a better manager, everybody on my management team reads First Break All the Rules. It's by the Gallup organization, and it is like the fundamental. It's basically like a fundamental requirement for being a great manager of people. So it's just a book. I read it over again every couple of years because it's so good. And then they have several books that come after it, but First Break All the Rules is my first one. Persuadability. So it is about how we get fooled into thinking that what we think is true. And so the value of being a persuadable leader, because a lot of times, we have preconceived notions that allow us to make decisions, and really it's a lot of unconscious bias that's happening. And I think really good leaders know how to change their mind, are open to changing their mind. And so I really recommend Persuadability. I can't remember something, I can't pronounce his last name. And then if you want to build a great company, I know that it's like, tried or probably like one of the most common books out there, but Good to Great is just one of the best business books out there. While it is not always filled with examples of businesses that have lasted, the principles are still really good in it. And if you're looking to grow a business, I think that is one of my top ones. In fact, I use quite a bit of they call it like a smack recipe. Like we have a smack recipe at Stone Age because of that book. So those would be 3 off the top of my head, but I'll send out a list because I read all the time. And on my website, I do have book reviews. I haven't done one in a while because I was building a new website and they didn't want me to put new content out there, but I've got like 5 new ones to come out. So you can check out my book reviews on my website.
Awesome. Next question is really about getting started. I think a lot of your discussion was talking about, being able to, that the steps to resiliency, I think, but I think some people find it a little bit difficult to take that first step. And so they're sitting in that this is going to be hard situation and not necessarily playing the victim, but just saying this is going to be hard. What's your recommendation to just go?
That is a great question. And it is so hard. And it all depends, like for me, that's why, I'm always careful about these stories because like, that's my personality. My personality is like risk taking, put myself out there, push boundaries. So it's easy for me to say, oh, I'm just going to do this. And I definitely want to acknowledge that there are many styles out there that it is not, that there are people who are risk adverse and taking even just one small step is scary, but that's what you have to do. And so my advice is always to break it down into the smallest chunks possible and just say, if there's one thing I can do to move forward, even if it seems insignificant, I'm going to do that. And then do it again the next day, and then do it again the next day. So let's say that let's go back to the raise situation, right? So you want to raise, but you're really scared to do it. You're afraid that you're going to, make your boss mad and get fired. And so you can tell yourself the reasons why you're not going to do that. So, okay, the one thing I can do is I need to be prepared. So I'm going to go do the benchmarking. I'm going to see what that looks like. All right, I can see where this is. All right, so if I was going to ask for that raise, what would I ask for? Put it down. Then say the next day, I'm going to ask myself, I'm going to write down how I'm going to ask for this raise, and I'm going to practice what it would be. So it's just those little steps that even no one has to see that you're taking action, but you're doing that internally, and that's just to keep doing a little bit each day. But I will tell you this. I mean, I had somebody, actually was the same employee who I had to do the 360 review with. I get up super early in the morning, and he was like, oh, I really want to get up early in the morning. Like, how do you do it? And I was like, I get up early in the morning. And he's like, that is like the worst answer and the best answer. I'm like, I know, right? But if you want to do something, like the only way is to just do it. And I know that that might sound a little, I don't know, flippant, but I'm not trying to be flippant. It is action. And so if you want something different, you do have to take a small step. So write out what some of those steps would be and just do one. And it can be a low risk one that nobody sees, but at least it's just one step. And then commit to yourself that you're going to do that the next day and the next day and the next day.
I think that's an excellent point, and that personal accountability is probably one of the hardest things to do because it's scary, right? Because you don't want to disappoint yourself on a daily basis, but I think breaking it down into manageable chunks is a very, very sound advice.
So
okay.
Let me give you one little tip on that. So I do these things called micro achievements. So I have all these big things that I want to do, but it can get lost in the shuffle of all of the day-to-day life things. So I work with my coach on micro achievements. So it's the things that I'm going to make sure that I do each week to move the ball down the court. So you can do that for yourself. Like I love the little clickable check boxes. So if you really want to make a big change and you go out and you list, okay, here are 10 things that I can do that are going to do it, and then just check them off each time you do it. It can be these little tiny micro achievements. That is a great way for you to be able to chunk it out and to check it off when you get it done, when you make that progress. So I use the checklist in Teams, and I have micro achievements for this week, and then I love it when I click it off and they're all crossed out. So, try tricks like that help you overcome the fear or, the procrastination, which is just another name for fear, to take the changes that you need, take the steps to make the changes that you want.
Yep, and I think everybody likes reward, right? I always say put those little carrots out there, and I think we recognize as leaders with employees that recognition works, but we don't necessarily apply those principles to ourselves sometimes. So putting those little carrots in place and those micro achievements is a really good place to start.
Yep.
Next question, I'm telling you, the salary,
I know. Salary's the hardest one.
So, one question on that is, you mentioned that you did a little bit of research in terms of market. How would you suggest that somebody go out and look for salary data and make a good comparison?
Yeah, so salary.com is so StoneAge pays for the they call it Comp Analyst, which is the not free version of salary.com, and it's great because it gives us a lot of benchmarking data and gives us a lot to slice and dice. Shockingly, it is almost spot on for the benchmarking that you can do on salary.com. Not always, but certainly close enough to make it to put you in the ballpark for sure. It's actually pretty accurate. So I would just go to salary.com and you can slice and dice by location, by size of company, whether that's in revenue, whether that's in number of people, and it will show you, it'll give you kind of job description. So if you don't have like a level, like, they have, level 1, level 2, level 3 kind of thing, you can slice and dice that way. So there's lots of different ways to be able to look at that data. So, I mean, that's where I would go. I have Comp Analyst now, but back before I didn't, when I was negotiating my salary, that's just what I did. And it's really actually pretty accurate.
Yeah, and I think the important pieces that you talked about there was really for people to understand the role and how they would compare the data, right? Because the worst thing you go in there doing is not having good comps. So it's kind of like real estate, right? You wouldn't compare your 15-bedroom house with 10 bathrooms to a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom. So kind of think about that as you're going out there and searching for data. There's some bigger organizations other than salary.com, but I think those are more geared to companies. But there's lots of resources out there. Just make sure that your comps are good.
Exactly, and understand it. Like they'll have salary, and they'll have where the benchmarking is 25, 50, 75%. So companies like StoneAge, we pay at the 50% benchmark within those ranges. So I would start kind of in that. Most companies are not on that high range, so understand that. And then they have what they call total cash compensation, TCC, and then non-cash benefits as well. So just make sure you understand all of those things and how that fits into your organization's overall compensation and benefits package, so that you go in not just focus on salary, because that's the easiest way for people to shoot it down, is to say, well, my salary needs to be this. Yes, but we have bonuses and profit sharing and ESOP, and we're an employee-owned company, so that's our employee ownership piece, which makes up the whole package. And so you don't want to just get hyper focused on one thing and make it seem like you don't appreciate all the other benefits that come with your compensation package. Just this is the one piece, and then how it fits in with everything else. So that's why it's super important to be prepared and to make sure that you understand the overall compensation picture, so that you don't inadvertently shoot yourself in the foot because you didn't take into consideration everything else. Because your boss almost always will push back and say, yeah, but what about these things? And you don't want to say, well, those things aren't important to me. All I care about is this piece. You may only care about this piece, but you don't want to say that. So just be prepared and understand that whole picture.
Awesome. Well, I think we have a couple more questions that I may just throw to you via email. We get copies of all the questions. So because we are running a little short on time, but I did want to just say thank you again. This was an amazing session. We have about 10 different comments saying like how wonderful this was, and very, very practical and inspiring. So we appreciate your time. I already got about 3 text messages from other members from LRW saying, can we have her back at our annual meeting? So
awesome. I would love to help. Reach out to me and go to my website. It's on the handout. I made that for myself last night. So, it's not super polished, but that's okay. I wanted to put something out that you could find me with. And so just go to my website. You can subscribe and find me on LinkedIn, and don't hesitate to send me an email or send me a DM in LinkedIn. I try to help everybody who comes across my path. And so if you want to have a follow-up conversation, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here for all of you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you, everybody that joined us today. And we look forward to seeing more of you on more of our webinars.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.